Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a quick but thorough look into energy drinks.
Yeah, we've gathered quite a bit of info.
Exactly. We want to get you up to speed fast, what's in them, what they do, if they're, worth it.
Right. If you want the key takeaways without getting totally bogged down in details, this is for you.
Our mission really is to just unpack what's essential from our sources.
What are these drinks made of? How do they affect you? And what's the bottom line on safety? All that, but, streamlined.
And here's something surprising to kick things off. Energy drinks. They're actually the second most popular supplement for American teens and young adults.
Wow, second only to multivitamins.
You got it, which
Right.
is huge, right? And immediately makes you wonder about the impact.
Definitely raises some flags.
Okay, so let's jump in. What are we talking about fundamentally with energy drinks?
Well, simply put, they're non-alcoholic drinks. They're marketed to make you feel less tired, boost physical performance, mental alertness, that sort of thing.
But they're different from just a regular soda.
Yeah, the key difference is the stimulants beyond just sugar, primarily caffeine, but often things like taurine, herbal extracts are added too. The energy is more about that stimulant kick, not so much caloric energy.
Gotcha. So it's a stimulant effect, not actual food energy. And it sounds like big business.
Oh, huge. It's a multi-billion-dollar market in the US alone, and it keeps growing.
Who's drinking them mostly?
It leans young. We see about 30 to 50% of American adolescents consuming them regularly.
30 to 50%. That's a lot.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the highest rates. Men aged 18 to 34. So yeah, a massive market driven largely by younger people.
Which I imagine gets health organizations worried.
Absolutely. Groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Heart Association,
Yeah.
they strongly advise against kids and teens drinking these.
Strongly against, not just caution, but actively recommend against.
Right, which really highlights the public health concern, especially given how common they are in those age groups.
Okay, so let's put into the can itself. What are the key ingredients we absolutely need to know about?
Number one is caffeine. That's the main stimulant.
Right.
But the amount, it varies wildly. Could be 50 milligrams, could be over 300 per serving, or can, or shot.
That's a huge range.
It is.
Yeah.
And often, ounce for ounce, it's way more caffeine than you'd find in soda. Plus, look out for guarana.
Guarana, what's that?
It's a plant extract, but it's another source of caffeine. So it adds to the total load, sometimes without being super obvious on the label.
Ah, so it's like hidden caffeine. Sneaky.
Kinda, yeah. The main takeaway is the caffeine can be really high, and it might come from more than one place in the ingredients list.
And what about the sugar? They seem famously sweet.
Many are loaded. High amounts of sucrose, glucose, high fructose corn syrup. Sometimes one can pushes you way over your daily recommended sugar intake.
Yikes. But there are sugar-free ones too, right?
Definitely. Lots of sugar-free options using artificial sweeteners, sucralose, aspartame, acesulfame K, or sometimes natural non-caloric ones like stevia.
So the energy from sugar is that quick spike, but the caffeine is the main stimulant effect we were talking about.
Exactly. Sugar gives you that fast glucose bump, but it's the caffeine providing the more lasting alertness.
Okay. What about things like taurine and all those B vitamins they plaster on the label?
Taurine is an amino acid, often added. But honestly, the scientific evidence for it doing much on its own at the levels in these drinks is pretty limited.
So maybe not doing much.
Probably not independently. There are even some questions about how it interacts with caffeine, particularly concerning the heart.
And the B vitamins, they often boast about having tons.
Yeah, often way, way above the recommended daily amount, like hundreds or thousands of percent. But unless you're actually deficient in B vitamins, which most people aren't, getting extra like that probably doesn't give you more energy.
So it's more for marketing appeal. Looks good on the can.
Seems like it. The key insight here is really that beyond caffeine, and maybe that sugar rush, the actual proven benefits of many of these other common additives are, well, they're questionable.
Makes reading the label tricky. And what about those energy blends? They sound mysterious.
Right, those proprietary blends, they often contain things like guarana again, more caffeine, ginseng, L-carnitine, glucuronolactone, a whole mix of stuff.
Do we know if they work or if they're safe together?
That's the problem. For many of these ingredients, especially mixed together in unknown quantities, the rigorous scientific backing for safety and effectiveness just isn't there.
And proprietary means they don't have to list the exact amounts of each thing.
Precisely. So you, the consumer, have a really hard time figuring out the total stimulant dose you're getting. It's kind of a black box.
Okay. Feels a bit like guesswork for the consumer then. So who are the main companies selling these drinks?
But you've got the long-standing giants, Red Bull and Monster. They still dominate a huge chunk of the market.
Yeah, everyone knows those.
But others are definitely making waves. PepsiCo has Rockstar, there's Bang, Celsius 5-Hour Energy, and newer brands like Celsius and Ghost are gaining traction, often targeting that fitness or lifestyle angle.
Interesting. And are there different basic types of energy drinks we see on the shelf?
Yeah, you can sort of categorize them. You have the traditional ones, high sugar, high caffeine, like the original Red Bull, or
The classics.
then the sugar-free or low-cal versions, using those sweeteners we mentioned. Think Red Bull sugar-free, Monster Ultra, lots of Celsius options.
Right.
Then there's a growing natural or organic category. They might use caffeine from green tea or yerba mate, natural sweeteners, fewer artificial additives. Brands like Runa, Guayaki fit here, some Celsius too.
Okay. Any others?
Yeah, the high performance or fitness ones,
Um.
often with added amino acids like BCAAs, electrolytes,
Uh,
think C4, Rain, Bang. And finally, those little concentrated energy shots like 5-Hour Energy, small volume, but usually a big caffeine hit.
so quite a variety, but does natural or fitness-focused automatically mean safer?
Not necessarily.
Yeah,
That's a
right.
key point. Even with different marketing angles or ingredient tweaks, the high caffeine content is often still a major factor across almost all types. That health halo can be misleading.
Good caution. Okay, so we know it's generally in them. How do they actually work in the body? What's the physiological effect?
Primarily, it's that caffeine again. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors in your brain. Adenosine is what makes you feel tired, so blocking it keeps you feeling awake.
It tricks your brain into not feeling sleepy.
Essentially, yes. It also triggers the release of other neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, which contributes to that feeling of alertness and focus.
And the sugar part?
The sugar gives you a very quick surge of glucose into your bloodstream. That's a rapid energy source for your cells, but it's usually pretty short-lived.
Right, the infamous sugar crash.
Exactly. Your body releases insulin to deal with the sugar spike, and that can often lead to your blood sugar dropping again, sometimes even lower than before, making you feel tired or sluggish. The caffeine effect lasts longer than that sugar rush.
And the other stuff, taurine, B vitamins, those blends, do they add much to the immediate effect?
Honestly, the evidence is weak or lacking for most of those other common ingredients having significant independent effects on energy or performance at the levels found in these drinks. It really comes back to the caffeine, maybe boosted temporarily by the sugar.
So it's mostly a caffeine delivery system, potentially with a lot of sugar. What are the big health risks we need to be aware of? This seems like the crucial part.
Definitely. The concerns are pretty wide-ranging. Cardiovascular effects are a major one.
Like what specifically?
We're talking increased heart rate, increased blood pressure. There are links to heart rhythm disturbances, palpitations, arrhythmias. Some studies even point to potential effects on the heart's electrical cycle, like QTc prolongation.
QTc prolongation, what does that mean?
It's a measure on an ECG, an electrocardiogram. If that interval gets too long, it increases the risk for potentially dangerous, even fatal irregular heartbeats.
That sounds serious.
It is. And there have been reports, case studies, linking excessive energy drink consumption to really severe events like heart attacks, strokes, even cardiac arrest, especially in younger people, which is alarming. And some research suggests the risk might be higher than from caffeine alone, possibly due to the combination of ingredients.
Wow. Okay, so heart health is a big concern. What else? Neurological or mental effects?
Yes. Anxiety, nervousness, jitters, those are common. Insomnia, difficulty sleeping is a big one. Headaches, too.
Can you get dependent?
Absolutely. Regular use can lead to caffeine dependence. And if you try to stop suddenly, you can experience withdrawal symptoms, typically headache, fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating.
Not pleasant. Any other areas?
Dental health is a big one. The high sugar content feeds bacteria that cause cavities.
Right, cavities.
But also, these drinks are often very acidic. That high acidity erodes tooth enamel, which is irreversible damage, and sipping them over time prolongs that acid attack. Plus, caffeine can cause dry mouth, reducing saliva's protective effect.
So bad for teeth in multiple ways.
Yep. Then there's potential dehydration, because caffeine is a mild diuretic. Metabolic issues too. The sugar contributes to weight gain and increases the risk of type 2 diabetes over time.
What about mixing them with alcohol? I feel like I hear about that a lot.
That's a particularly dangerous combination. The caffeine can mask the depressant effects of alcohol, making people feel less intoxicated than they actually are.
So they might drink more.
Exactly. They might underestimate their impairment, drink more alcohol, and engage in riskier behaviors like drunk driving. It's a bad mix. There's also been a notable increase in emergency department visits related to energy drinks, often involving co-ingestion with alcohol or other drugs.
That really underscores the real-world dangers. Okay, so a lot of potential downsides. Are there any proven benefits to balance this out, besides just feeling awake for a bit?
Well, the main benefits that have some solid scientific backing are really just the known effects of caffeine.
Such.
Things like enhanced physical endurance, helping you go longer during aerobic exercise. Maybe some benefits for strength and power, though that's a bit less consistent in studies. And improved alertness, attention, reaction time, the cognitive stuff,
So basically, the benefits you'd get from caffeine anyway?
pretty much.
Yeah.
There's very little convincing evidence that the taurine, the massive doses of B vitamins, or the other herbal ingredients significantly add to these effects beyond what the caffeine provides.
So when you weigh it, it's caffeine benefits versus this long list of potential risks from the whole concoction.
That's the trade-off, and you have to ask, are there safer ways to get that caffeine boost if you need it, like coffee or tea? And are there healthier ways to boost energy overall? For most people, especially kids, teens, and those with underlying health conditions, the risks seem to likely outweigh those limited caffeine-driven benefits.
Makes sense. What about regulations? Are these drinks tightly controlled?
It's complicated. The FDA doesn't actually have a specific category called energy drink. They're regulated either as conventional foods beverages or as dietary supplements.
And that makes a difference.
Yes, the rules are different. For example, there are no federal limits on the amount of caffeine allowed in drinks regulated as dietary supplements, which many energy shots are. For those regulated as food, there isn't a specific caffeine limit either, though there's a level generally recognized as safe for caffeine in cola-type beverages, but energy drinks often exceed that.
So no hard cap on caffeine content, generally.
Not federally mandated for most of these products. And labeling isn't always perfect either. While many companies now list the total caffeine content, it wasn't always required, especially for those proprietary blends, if regulated as supplements.
What did the health organizations say officially?
We mentioned the AAP and AHA strongly advising against use by children and adolescents. They state there's really no established safe level of consumption for this age group, given the potential risks to their developing cardiovascular and neurological systems.
So a very clear no for kids and teens. Is the industry doing anything?
The American Beverage Association has voluntary guidelines for its members. Things like disclosing total caffeine amounts from all sources, adding advisory statements saying they're not recommended for children, pregnant or nursing women, or caffeine-sensitive people, and agreeing not to market in K-12 schools.
But those are voluntary, right? Not legally required for everyone.
Correct. Voluntary guidelines. So there are definitely regulatory gaps, particularly around consistent caffeine limits and mandatory clear labeling across the board, which, given the risks we've discussed, is something public health advocates point to.
Okay. How do these compare directly to, say, coffee or tea if someone just wants caffeine?
Well, the ingredient profiles are very different. Energy drinks are complex mixtures, often with lots of added sugar or artificial sweeteners, plus the taurine, vitamins, extracts, etc. Coffee and tea are simpler, containing naturally occurring compounds, including antioxidants, which might even have health benefits.
And caffeine levels.
Variable in all three, honestly. A cup of coffee can range quite a bit depending on the beans and brew method. Tea is generally lower. Energy drinks, as we said, can go from moderate to extremely high, plus that potential hidden caffeine from things like guarana.
Sugar content.
Typically very high in standard energy drinks, unless they're sugar-free. With coffee and tea, it entirely depends on what you add: sugar, milk, cream, syrups. Plain coffee or tea has no sugar.
So, overall health picture.
Given the added ingredients, high sugar or artificial sweeteners, potential for very high caffeine, and links to various health risks, the profile for most energy drinks doesn't look as favorable as moderate consumption of plain coffee or tea. Coffee and tea, in moderation, might even offer some protective benefits.
So if energy drinks aren't ideal and maybe you want to cut back on caffeine generally, what are healthier ways to actually boost your energy levels sustainably?
Yeah, this is key. It's really about addressing the root causes of fatigue. First, look at your diet. Are you eating balanced meals with complex carbohydrates, lean protein, healthy fats, getting enough nutrient-dense whole foods, avoiding ultra-processed stuff? Regular meal timing helps too.
Makes sense. Fueling properly. What else?
Exercise. Regular physical activity is huge. It actually boosts energy levels over time, improves your cardiovascular health, makes your cells' energy factories, the mitochondria, work better, and improves sleep quality. Aiming for those recommended activity guidelines is really beneficial.
So moving more actually gives you more energy, counterintuitively.
Absolutely. And then there's sleep. Prioritizing sleep hygiene is crucial. Aim for 7 to 9 hours for adults. Maintain a consistent sleep schedule. Make your bedroom dark, quiet, cool. Have a relaxing routine before bed. Limit screens. Poor sleep is a massive energy drain.
Sleep is fundamental. Anything else?
Stay hydrated. Dehydration is a common cause of fatigue, so sipping water throughout the day is important. And manage stress. Chronic stress is exhausting. Techniques like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, deep breathing, or just making time for hobbies can really help.
So diet, exercise, sleep, hydration, stress management, the pillars of health, really.
Exactly. And if you want a beverage alternative, water is always best. Plain coffee or tea in moderation. Maybe some natural fruit juices or smoothies, but watch the sugar there. Herbal teas without caffeine, coconut water for hydration, even things like water with chia seeds.
Lots of better options.
The main point is focusing on those healthy lifestyle habits for energy that lasts, rather than relying on a temporary, potentially risky, artificial boost from a can.
Okay, this has been a really efficient deep dive. So to quickly sum up, energy drinks, they give you that quick kick, mostly from caffeine.
Right, a stimulant effect.
But they come with a pretty significant list of potential health risks: heart issues, neurological effects, dental problems, metabolic concerns tied to that high caffeine, often high sugar or artificial sweeteners, and that complex mix of other ingredients.
Yeah, the formulation is key, and the warnings from major health organizations, especially about kids and teens, are really stark. They shouldn't be consuming these, period.
And importantly, safer ways to get caffeine exist, like coffee or tea in moderation.
And even better, there are much healthier, more sustainable ways to boost your actual energy through diet, exercise, sleep, hydration, and managing stress. Those tackle the root causes.
So the final thought for you listening is maybe to really consider the true cost of that quick buzz in a can. Is that temporary lift worth potentially compromising your long-term health?
It's about making informed choices, knowing what's in there, knowing the risks, and knowing there are healthier alternatives available.
Maybe ask yourself, what's one small change you could make starting today towards getting energy in a healthier, more sustainable way? Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.